beneath my skin. Walk. Arakia lifted its twisted hand towards the forest. It did not need to tell me twice, my body could finally move again, and boy I ran so fucking fast. The snow was as deep as before, but it didn't affect my current speed. I swear I beat some type of world record as I bolted through the forest. I wasn't sure what to expect though. I just wanted to get away from that thing. It was so out of this world, nothing I have ever heard about or seen before. At that point, I only accepted the fact that I was alive, and that Arakiel saved me out of kindness, but I could never have been more wrong. After running for a long time, I could feel the forest loosen up, not quite as thick and dense as before. And there I saw my glorious stallion, the snow scooter, covered in snow, almost invisible, but I saw it. I jumped on, started it up and headed back to my mother's house. My mom sitting in my father's old chair, crying, was the first thing I saw, then my neighbors and the local police officers. "Where the hell have you been, Anon?" my mother said, then hugged me as if it was the last time she hugged me. "Son, you have some explaining to do," one of the officers said. So I sat down, and explained the whole story, except the part about Arakiel. "Thank God you're alive, son. In this cold weather most men would have died after breaking through a frozen lake like you did." Thank God? I thought to myself, God had nothing to do with this creature in the woods, there was something sinister about it all. The police officers and the neighbors left, my mother went to bed, and so did I. Before finally getting a good night rest, I took a last look out the window in my old room, second floor. And there it was, standing, not quite tall enough to reach my window, but its face was looking straight at me. "Speak of or write down my name, and what has been given, will be taken, you have a debt to pay." The same voice as before, as powerful and clear as a presidential speech. This sentence is burned into my memory and I pray to God that writing this won't put me in any kind of trouble. And then it vanished, where you probably ask. I don't know, it just fucking disappeared into the dark night. Now, to this day, I have met with Arakiel several times, in my dreams and in life. I'm not quite sure what to do. My mother fell sick not long after the first time I met the creature, and once again it approached me, asking if I wanted her to die or live. I of course said I wanted my mother to live, and not long after, the sickness were gone, as if she just healed it away in one night. I fear I have taken choices which is not mine to take, and I fear for my life and soul if we have a soul. This death dealer seems to prevent life from being taken away, but I'm certain it can take a life too. It is as if Arakiel is using me, only as a vessel to fulfill the creature's purpose, to seal deals with it so that it can take the souls of whom it has a deal with when we die. That's why I fear my life, my mother's life, and all the other lives I've had the chance to save or let go, will ultimately fade away when I do. Thanks for listening, Anon. Please let me know if you've heard of anyone else with any similar experiences. I am now 24 years old. I hope to live long, but I'm not sure, as Arakiel is always watching me, waiting in the darkness.
What do you think of that picture?
OK/X/. I need to talk to you about something and tell my story. I'm telling you right now, don't expect any sort of satisfying conclusion barring a major breakthrough. Because I was told by my psychologist to take my time and get every detail I possibly can. There will be some parts written that will be more for setup than anything else, and the green texted parts will be, quite literally, flashes taken from my memory. This whole ordeal takes quite a bit of concentration, so please bear with me. When I was 8 years old, I had a gap in my memory. This gap was over a little over 12 hours and took place during a family weekend at our cabin in the state park. I could remember waking up in the cabin on our second day there, early in the morning, to go snowshoeing. Then I remember pulling into the driveway of out home later that night, with my family who were all dead silent and me feeling terrified. I had nightmares for 2 years that would wake me up, screaming. My sister did too. My parents were never mad at us. They were very understanding, and never asked what the nightmares were about. I never asked my sister about hers. I knew in my gut that we both dreamt about the cabin and our final weekend there. That's all I could remember about them. They were about the cabin, I was running, and nothing else. It got to be too much for me after 2 years, having this gap, not remembering. I finally built up the courage to ask my dad, why don't we go to the cabin anymore? I remember the look on his face, the blood had completely drained from it. He looked horrified, then angry, then confused. He asked me, you don't remember? His voice was quiet, a whisper. I just shook my head, no. He looked relieved. He put a slightly scared-looking smile on his face and said, there was a fire and it burned down. It was pretty bad and you were young and scared. Your brain must have hid the memory of it from you so you wouldn't be scared anymore. My brains can do that? Yes. Your brains can do some funny things. It's all to help you though, so don't think about it anymore. Okay. That was it. It was my dad, no reason for him to lie to me except about Santa Claus. Of course I believed him. And I would have gone on believing him if I didn't overhear him that night. I had a TV in my room and a bedtime of 9 p.m. at the time. My sister, being 4 years older, would get to stay up later. One of my regular habits would be to watch TV after I went to bed by muting it and putting the captions on. So that night I did the same thing, and when my father thought I was asleep, I could overhear him talking to my mother and sister. I won't bother you with the whole conversation, just the important parts. He doesn't remember. Repressed probably. I told him there was a fire and not to dwell on it. If he asks any more, tell him one of our lanterns got knocked over when we were setting up dinner. I didn't sleep that night. Hard to do so when you find out your whole family is conspiring against you and you don't understand why. And at 10 years old, I was too damn afraid to confront them again. The years went by. I did my best to forget that my family was lying to me. I really was too afraid to know what happened. The nightmares kept up, but I got better at dealing with them. I stopped waking up screaming by the time I turned 11. The year I entered high school, my grandma had a stroke and my mom retired to take care of her, state trooper for 20 years. My dad was one as well and retired at 28 years. Their careers are somewhat relevant later. I started falling into depression around then. Actively thinking about killing myself. I didn't know why, I just didn't want to keep going. My parents had guns, I knew where they were, quick and painless. I almost did it in my sophomore year, but couldn't will myself to pull the trigger. I was 20 when I decided I had enough. My first girlfriend, lasted 2 years, cheated on me, broke up with me, and I didn't see a reason to go on anymore. She knew about my past attempt and history of depression, only one I ever told to that point, and got scared and called the cops on me. I was put in a psychiatric institute for a week, and was put in touch with a psychologist to help me. By the time I met with my psychologist, I knew I wasn't a danger to myself anymore. I had decided that I couldn't do that to my family. And it wasn't some medical professional who made me come to that decision, it was my uncle. He owns a vending company and stocks the machines. One of his clients is the psych institute I was in. He pulled me aside at lunch and begged me to do what I had to get better. He told me how my dad informed him of what happened to me, how he was sobbing uncontrollably, how until my dad got the words out he was afraid his brother was telling him that he was sick and going to die. That got to me. Not particularly relevant, but it's one of the most important moments in my life and helps show why I made some of the decisions I made after. So I looked forward to seeing a psychologist. I wanted to figure out my problems and get better so I would never even think of putting my family through that again. Doc was really nice and I opened up to him immediately. We just sort of hit it off really well. Maybe it was my eagerness, maybe it was because I felt like he genuinely wanted to help. Probably both. For 7 sessions, 1 week. For 7 weeks I talked about my life and childhood and everything and anything I thought might be relevant and even the stuff I didn't think was. I answered his questions as best as I could and he sat and listened to me. It was on the 8th week that we finally touched on my dreams, and the blocked memory of the cabin. I don't know why he waited so long. I had admitted that I had trouble sleeping due to nightmares almost all my life in my 3rd session and there wasn't a follow-up until now. Maybe he was just trying to get to know more about me, and get me more comfortable with him before he broached it. But he broached it, he did. Let's talk about your nightmares. You told me you've had them consistently since you were young. What are they about? I can remember them ever. Just little bits. I'm in our old cabin, I'm running, I'm scared. Nothing else. I told you about our cabin, right? Yes. You said you spent a lot of time there when you were young. Sounded like you loved the place. Did something happen there? Yes. What happened? I don't know. I can't remember. I don't believe him? No. He lied. Why do you say that? It was then that I related to him everything you currently know. The lie my father told me, the agreement between my family to keep up the lie, and of course the total block of what happened. A blocked memory of a cabin from childhood, nightmares since, family not telling me the truth for my own good, depression years later, and a suicide attempt. I was every psychologist's wet dream, and I knew it when I saw Doc's eyes that he had written this up to one of 2 things. 1. I was molested. 2. I witnessed a murder. 3. Both. Don't think it hadn't crossed my mind. I had pretty much written that off as what happened, especially once I started unblocking pieces of that memory and parts of it fit. The more I remembered though, the more I realized that's not what happened. So don't go writing me off just yet. So this is when Doc and I got to work. He had me start keeping a dream journal and writing as much as I could about the nightmares the second I woke up. We did meditations during the session and had me practice at home. He even took me to a friend of his who was a hypnotherapist where I was told I wasn't susceptible to hypnotism probably because I believe it's total bullshit. I threw myself at unblocking the memory with Doc's help. I was done running from it, I was done ignoring it. I even told my family that I knew the fire story was a lie, but they still wouldn't tell me a goddamn thing. My father actually almost took me off of therapy after that, which I knew was a risk but I begged and pleaded not to. He finally relented, but still wouldn't talk about that day. At the advice of Doc, I even revisited the cabin once. I went in the summer and during the day. It was a ruin and burnt to the ground. I had gotten pieces of that day back by then and I knew there was no fire and I have made the assumption that my fire came back at some point and burned it. 4 fucking years. I did all of this for 4 years and still am. I don't have all of the memory back. Just pieces. I have filled page after page, book after book, with details of my nightmares. Repeated and repeated until finally something new would come out. And that would repeat and repeat and repeat until another new thing came up. In those same journals I would sit and write as much as I can remember after each meditative session. Doc and I don't know what happened yet, not the whole story. But we're still piecing it together. I brought up sharing the details with you guys and seeing what you thought. He was initially against it because he didn't want your judgments and theories to cloud over my memories. After a while though,